Good morning. It's fun to be here. The last time I was on this stage was about 10 years ago, so a little bit of a journey. I was in town last month. Our company was holding our annual Activate conference, which is a search and AI conference. And we had Dave Shabmel, who was an analyst with IDC there, and he said, search is in its infancy. And I'm thinking to myself, really? Its infancy? I mean, because search this year is going to be 30 in 2020, especially if we're talking about the search that Alan Amtaj invented for the University of McGill University, to search the FTP archives. If you think, 30 years we've been doing search, and we're only in the infancy. But then again, if you think about it, let's look at cars. And when I started putting this together, I mean, I had this idea, the Model T rolled off in the 1900s. That prototype for the car was actually conceived in 1769. 1769, it took 150 years before it actually rolled off an assembly line. And then it's taken almost another 100 years before we were thinking in terms of smart cars and autonomous vehicles. Now, I don't think it's going to take anywhere near that long with search, because obviously we've been accelerating the rate of change. But I do think that search is really at an inflection point right now. And so where are we headed? And I think one of the ways that we can get a better sense of it is what's happening with our brethren on the digital commerce side. Now, the folks over there, in fact, do we have any digital commerce people in the room? No, they're back there trying to figure out how to beat off Amazon. So nobody goes to malls anymore. And all traffic seems to go to Amazon, right? And they can afford to get those goods to your back door overnight. Gosh, you order now in some places, in some of the cities, you can pick up same day. So how do you compete in that type of environment? And what they're finding is that they have to do this hyper-personalization. They have to go beyond the static rules. And I said I was here 10 years ago. We were talking about text analytics, and I know there's text analytics folks out there. This is a text analytics track. The idea of creating that metadata, either automating it, or you'd have librarians busy tagging. And I can tell you, having come out of publishing, people are exhausted when they finally finish the piece. If they're going to tag it, they're going to come up with 3 things, and that's the end of it. And it's usually 3 fairly banal things, so you end up with everything lumped under 3 categories all the time. So this idea that we would be able to do hyper-personalization is really, really key in the commerce area. And it makes more sense when I start to tell you stories. I love telling stories. It makes more sense when you start thinking in terms of when you go out and you want to buy. Now, of course, as marketers, we're all thinking in terms of, let's create these personas. So in retail, we might do something like you've got the mom of 2 kids and she's on a budget, or you might have the brand conscious buyer who really isn't as worried about price as somebody else might be, et cetera, et cetera. They'll come up with all these different personas. But the reality is a persona changes the minute emotion comes into it. So that's that situational moment that can suddenly throw your behavior off. You're a mom, you're a budget conscious consumer, and your child's backpack ripped, and they have to have it for the next day. And you're online and you're furiously trying to figure out where to get one. Are you really worried about your price? You're probably keying in and you're thinking in terms of now, because our pattern of behavior has been so indoctrinated by devices like Siri or Alexa that we're thinking now in terms of natural language sentences. Need a backpack, red, small, something like that. What if you spell backpack as 2 words instead of 1? Is the search going to come back as null? Now, interestingly enough, in retail, when a person really wants something, they go to the search bar. That's where they start. They're not looking at the facets. They go to the search bar. That's intent to buy. And 80 of the time, they're not going to find what they're looking for. And they say bad search becomes the best lead generator for Amazon, because you go there and you go to Amazon. You're not going to give it a second chance. Now, we're in enterprises, and we don't have to worry about that, right? Because we're all a captive audience. I mean, we can't find it. We aren't running out the door and running to Amazon to go find that last week's report. How are we going to, and we're bringing our consumer ideals into the workplace, right? We want to use natural language search. We want auto-suggest. We want to get ideas of what our colleagues might be looking for. It puts tremendous pressure on the search architects in the room, and I know a couple of you, because you're over there trying to figure out, how do I boost, how do I change relevancy? Do you even allow natural language search? Or are you still requiring people to think Boolean? And frankly, not a lot of people have a library science degree. So if they don't know how to do it, are they going to find it? And typically, and as one who's been in the business now for 30, 35 years, I get a call. I used to call myself the company damn. People would say, where is this? Because they couldn't find it. And maybe you see that as well. So our company did a survey. We did a survey of online commerce people. These slides are available, so I'm going to go through it really quickly, but I want to call out a couple of things. We had 123 companies participate, doing $100 million or more in revenue, so good-sized companies. And we asked them, what kind of online e-commerce personalization capabilities do you use? And of course, do you do types of categories, facets, right? Yes, 75% yes. Customers, can you see recommendations based on similar customers' activity? And again, 70% yes. You think like this in business, when you're shopping. Do you provide this exact same opportunity at work? Have you ever thought of creating an area saying, people in this department tend to read this? That's a knowledge share right there. And you'd have to be able to curate that in some way. And I'm not suggesting you do it by hand, because it would make you a little insane. So we asked the next question: select all the ways you use AI and machine learning to power the customer experience. Document classification, that's this automatically classifying. Product recommendations, like I was saying, can you handle NLP processing? Query intent detection and anomaly detection, and then you can see the numbers going down. But let me give you some more ideas of what I mean by these things. The mother who's in a hurry types in knapsack. She's not thinking. Maybe she spelled it as two words. Maybe she did backpack, or inverse the C and the K, and you're going to get a null. And a null is the kiss of death in digital commerce. And it's highly annoying in the enterprise market, right? Also in the enterprise market, because everybody's thinking in terms of, gee, I have to create compelling content for our people, so now we put titles of white papers that are like clickbait. We've gotten engaging, and it's clickbaitish, and it's cute, and it's fun, and doesn't really say what the paper's about. So how are you supposed to find what your colleagues are all saying? This is a great paper, you gotta find it. But it's not listed in the way that you might. And if you're only indexing the titles, you're eliminating a lot of the information that your colleagues might be able to see. These companies are using machine learning to go through and look at the entire corpus of what's available. They're looking at what we call signals. Signals is what you click on, what you don't click on, what you put in your shopping cart, what you download. Do you come back and download it again? And all of that in aggregate is being compiled, so you can start seeing things from an anomaly detection. You can see trends. People are all looking at this piece. This is a trend, an outlier. An activity that's an outlier is an anomaly detection. On query analytics, you can automatically start capturing all the misspellings. And we use an algorithm called Word2Vec that allows us to create these synonyms very, very quickly. If you have text analytics and metadata, and you're working with ontologies and taxonomies, it's terrific. That's more data. So you have more data to become smarter, faster about what something's worth. funny, how many people here are thinking in terms of learning to rank or boosting results? Do you ever get asked to boost results for, okay, I'm seeing a handful of folks agreeing. So a couple years ago, I was in a content officer position, and people were complaining that the boosting wasn't correct. And this was a company, it was an XML company, and we had a really robust search. And so I decided to just put the company name, and I said every time you see the company name, boost it. And instead, we kept getting all these Gartner reports, like all the Gartner reports that we'd loaded into our repository were what were coming up first, suppressing our content. Because our content only had the name of the company maybe on the front page or on the legal page or something like that. What I didn't think of is that Gartner, when they license you something, on the bottom of every page, it says license to your company. And so I was inadvertently boosting. Now, using machine learning, if I could see that by doing so, people eliminated it, they didn't click on anything, the machine would get smarter and start to suppress those results automatically. Now, of course, the cost of poor transition to digital in commerce means closures, and I think all of us have seen quite a bit out there. We don't have that same existential issue on the enterprise side, or do we? Here's an incident where Coca-Cola had to have an earnings adjustment, and they said, no, we have these royalties, we have these contracts. They weren't able to find them. It's a $9 billion adjustment in income. Wonder what the tax fine is on that. So if you can't find an asset, and I have many more stories like that, large oil company, they go out and they do these big projects where they go out and they look at resources, and the earth doesn't change, right? So they've done it, it's in their archives, maybe it was in a CAD at some point, or a physical drawing even further back. They've now digitized it, and they've lost it. How do you go back in, especially if you're talking about the resources might have been a mine or a field in Saudi Arabia or Iraq or Iran or something like that, or Persia. Do we catch that? Do we make the name change? The cost of recreating these assets is so astronomical that not being able to find them is really difficult. So if you can't find things, then you can't do R&D efficiently. Clinical trials. You can't do online retail if you're a manufacturer and you're trying to get your information out there. You can't do customer insights effectively. Fraud and compliance may elude you. And customer service is definitely going to suffer. So quickly, here's a couple of companies that we've worked with that are using AI-powered search, AI and machine learning, for better customer support. Red Hat, one of the largest open source technology companies out there, providing support around those products, recently acquired by IBM. They saw a 200% increase in click-through, 50,000 support tickets were reduced, which is a tremendous cost savings if you're not getting people calling you up on the phone looking for things. Here they've said some nice things about us, so I'll let you read that later. Reddit. Reddit is one of the largest websites out there in the world. 10 million monthly posts, and this is a couple years ago, so I'm sure those numbers have accelerated dramatically. 3 million daily comments, and you know what they said to us after the change? You can count the number of search errors we get now on one hand. So, digital commerce, Lucidworks produces a product called Fusion, and Fusion sits on a stack of a number of very powerful open source tools. We use Solr for NoSQL, Lucene is the search, we use Spark on the analytics side, and then we fuse it all together, and we've built all of the connectors and so on that make it really, really great. So here you can see the data that's coming in. This is what digital commerce companies are using, some of the largest ones in the world. This is what enterprise companies are using, and these are the different types of data. and you can see facets and user signals, boosted results, all the things that you're looking for. So in order to get these better outcomes. Now, here's some of our selected clients, our NASCAR slide, my information. If you'd like a copy of the survey that we did on the commerce side to give you some ideas of where you might want to take things on the digital enterprise side, drop me a note. Just put survey in the subject line and I'll send you a copy. And then I have one last thought because I loved Gretchen's speech so much. And there was that slide in there talking about acting your way to change or thinking versus thinking about it in a different way. So I want you to all just real quickly clasp your hands and put your one thumb over the other. Now reverse it. It's really awkward, right? Change is hard, but if you undo your hands and put them back together, it's easier to make that change. You have to think about it differently. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.